Welcome to Magnificat TV News, dedicated to providing news of the Church. Today is Wednesday, November 30th, 2022, and these are our news. The Pope has intervened in the Caritas International and dismissed its entire board of directors, including Cardinal Tagle, its president. The Vatican has published the intervention of Cardinal Ladaria, prefect of the Dicastery of the Doctrine of Faith, at the meeting with the German bishops. The intervention of the prefect of Dicastery for Bishops, Cardinal Aulet, at the meeting with the German Bishops' Conference has also been published. The Vatican has protested for the first time at what it sees as China's failure to comply with the agreement signed with the Holy See. The prosecutor in the trial against Cardinal Becciu, which is taking place in the Vatican, has charged the cardinal with a criminal conspiracy. Following the report on the management of Caritas International, the Pope has decided to intervene and has dismissed the entire board of directors, including the president, Cardinal Tagle.
A new ecclesial institution has been intervened through a decree of Pope Francis. Caritas International will have a temporary administration following the discovery of a management errors on the part of the current management team, whose president was Cardinal Tagle. According to the Vatican, to achieve the proposed objective, it seems necessary to review the current regulatory framework to make it more appropriate to the statutory functions of the organization, as well as to prepare it for the elections to be held during the next General Assembly, at which a new management team will be elected. The Pontiff has appointed an extraordinary commissioner, a layman very close to the Jesuits, Francesco Pinelli. He will be assisted by Maria Amparo Alonso, currently Caritas Director of Advocacy, and Jesuit Father Manuel Morujao. During this period of reorganization, the Pope has decided to terminate the current leadership roles. This follows an investigation launched earlier this year. According to the report, there was no evidence of financial mismanagement or sexual misconduct, but there were shortcomings in management procedures, which also had a negative effect on team spirit and staff morale.
The Vatican has published the content of the speech given by Cardinal Ladaria, prefect of the Doctrine of the Faith, in his dialogue with the German bishops.
In his speech of some 2,000 words, entitled Part of a Larger Body, Cardinal Ladaria identified 5 main concerns about the German synodal journey. The first was that its documents did not form a coherent whole and needed to be summarized in a final document. Secondly, he said the text seemed to present the Church from the outset as a structural abusive organization which must be brought under the control of overseers as soon as possible. In this sense, the greatest danger of many operational proposals of the text of the Synodal Way is that one of the most important achievements of the Second Vatican Council, namely the clear teaching of the mission of the bishops and thus of the local church, is lost, he commented. Thirdly, Cardinal Ladaria said that the text suggested that everything has to be changed regarding the Church's teaching on sexuality, especially as expressed in the 1992 Catechism of the Catholic Church. Fourthly, Cardinal Ladaria argued that the text did not do justice to the Church's teaching that priestly ordination is reserved for men, reductively suggesting that the fundamental dignity of women is not respected in the Catholic Church because they do not have access to priestly ordination. Fifthly, he said the synodal text overlooked a precept of Vatican II, according to which, in order to keep the gospel always whole and alive within the church, the apostles left the bishops as their successors, handing over to them the authority to teach in their own place. The cardinal made it clear that it is not possible to equate this delicate and decisive task in the life of the Catholic Church with other offices in the Church, such as those of theologians and experts in other disciplines.
Like Cardinal Adaria's address to the German bishops, the Vatican has published Cardinal Aulet's speech.
In his approximately 1,005 words address, Cardinal Ouellet, prefect of the Dicastery for Bishops, said that the synodal proposals pose serious difficulties from an anthropological, pastoral, and ecclesiological point of view, referring to criticisms that they could lead to schism. The Canadian cardinal said he understood that the German bishops were not seeking a break with a universal church, but were making concessions under very strong cultural and media pressure, but said, "It is striking that the agenda of a limited group of theologians has become the majority proposal of the German episcopate. Abolition of compulsory celibacy, ordination of married men, access of women to ordained ministry, moral evaluation of homosexuality, the structural functional limitation of hierarchical power, reflection on sexuality inspired by gender theory, etc." What has happened and where have we ended up? Many believers and observers ask in amazement. It is hard to avoid the impression that the very serious issue of abuse cases has been used to push other ideas not directly related to it. Ouellet added that the synodal path seemed to seek the transformation of the Church, and not just pastoral innovation in the moral or dogmatic fields, arguing that it damages the communion of the Church because it sows doubt and confusion among the people of God. The cardinal accused the organizer of the German synodal way of downplaying the importance of Pope Francis' 2019 letter to German Catholics, in which he reflected on the principles of an authentic reform. Then, growing tensions with the official magisterium arose as the war progressed, leading the proposals that openly contradict the teaching affirmed by every pope since Vatican II. Ouellet said, highlighting the call for women's ordination. Ouellet called for the German Synod to be suspended and for a fundamental review to follow at a later date, in light of the outcome of the global synodal process. This request was rejected by the Germans. The reason for this moratorium is concern for the unity of the Church, which is based on the unity of the bishops in communion and obedience to Peter. The endorsement of this controversial proposal by an episcopate in difficulty will sow further doubt and confusion among the people of God.
The Vatican has protested for the first time to Chinese government, accusing it of not respecting the agreement signed between the two institutions.
The recently renewed discrete agreements between the Vatican and the Chinese Communist government has received its first public denunciation from the Vatican. The Chinese government has invested a new auxiliary bishop in the diocese that is not even recognized by the Holy See, and therefore the bishop has not received the Pope's approval. The facts are so public that in this case it is not possible to disguise them, even if the details of the agreement are not known. Surprise and regret on the part of the Holy See at the news of the investiture ceremony which took place on November 24 in Nanshan of Monsignor John Peng Wanshou, Bishop of Yunxiang, as Auxiliary Bishop of Jiangxi, a diocese not recognized by Rome. With a note in the Bolletino, the Vatican hopes that this will not happen again and that the Chinese will deign to explain themselves. Moreover, the civil recognition of Bishop Peng was reportedly preceded by long and strong pressure from the local authorities. The interim agreement was signed by representatives of the Holy See and the People's Republic of China on September 22, 2018. The agreement provided for an ad experimentum implementation period of 2 years. In October 2020, the validity of the agreement was extended for another 2 years. On October 22 this year, the agreement was renewed.
A new charge has been added to those against Cardinal Becciu, that of conspiracy to commit a crime.
Cardinal Becciu is being investigated for a alleged conspiracy to commit a crime at the Vatican, Holy See prosecutor Alessandro Didi said during the hearing of the embezzlement trial in which he is charged. Becciu is on trial at the Vatican for irregularities in the management of funds of the Secretary of State, of which he was number 2 between 2011 and 2018, such as the case of the sale and purchase, which ended in fraud of a building in central London. However, during the 37th hearing on Thursday, the prosecutor acknowledged that in another plot of the process of the Italian cardinal was being investigated with 3 other people for the crime of illicit association. To this end, the Vatican issued a rogatory request for the court of the Italian city of Sassari to provide a documentation of an investigation of the Space Cooperative of Ossieri, led by Antonino Becciu, the brother of the cardinal. Among the documentation received by the Vatican are notes from the Guardia di Finanza, tax police of the city of Oristano, and a series of chat conversations taken from the phones of Becciu's niece, Maria Luisa Zambrano, and his brother. A disturbing fact has also emerged, according to the prosecutor, the recording of a phone call between the cardinal and the Pope on 24 July 2021, 3 days before the opening of the embezzlement trial. The conversation could only be heard by the judges and lawyers of the parties. But according to the prosecutor, Becciu is heard telling the Pope, "You have already condemned me, it is useless to go to trial." Later, in this conversation, Cardinal Becciu asked the pontiff to say that he had authorized him to make payments of several €100,000 to an intermediary company in London for the release of kidnapped missionaries in Africa.
Our editorial this week is dedicated to reflecting on the German bishops' claim to remain Catholic, but in their own way.
When a few days ago, I heard the president of the German bishops, Monsignor Batzing, give a summary of his ad limina visit to the Vatican after that cordial but serious confrontation they had with Cardinals Laderia and Wellet. When we heard them say that they did not want schism, but that they wanted to remain Catholics, but in their own way, I was reminded of the old song of Vincent Fernandez, My Way. His way, perhaps. The song had something prophetic in it when it said the end is near. Or perhaps it represented what is at the heart of the issue with Christ for those pre-schismatical German Catholics, as the song says, "I never lived a love that was important to me." Maybe this is really the point. Can I be Catholic in my own way or our way? Is that possible? Benedict XVI, many years ago, when he was prefect of the doctrine of the faith, defined this style of Catholicism as the religion of the supermarket. You go with the shopping cart in the supermarket. There are different types of detergents. The cheapest one, the one that suits you, you put it in the cart. Then you go to another section. There is rice or oil or vegetables, and you choose what you want and put it in the cart. Even before you go to the cashier to pay, you can change your mind. Well, I have seen this cheaper, or actually it does not suit me, and I leave it. When you get to the cashier to pay, and the person in front or behind you has in his cart some completely different products, maybe some are the same. That is the religion of the supermarket. The religion of the supermarket consists in saying, I believe in this, and you believe in what you want. I believe that Jesus Christ is a great man, and his teachings can be changed. And others will say, no, Jesus Christ is God, and therefore his teachings are untouchable. The religion of the supermarket says, for example, that for me the liturgy has to be creative, while another will say, no, for me the liturgy has to be faithful. The religion of the supermarket says, for example, that there is no problem with having sex outside of marriage, while others will say, no, fidelity is a value that must be maintained. For the religion of the supermarket, some will say, well, there is nothing after death, and others will say, I believe in eternal life. For the supermarket religion, some will say there is no real presence of Jesus in the Eucharist. That is simply a symbol. And others will say the Lord is there, present, really present in body and soul, humanity and divinity. The religion of the supermarket is the relativist, the triumph of relativism, and that and nothing else is what the German bishops want. I want to be Catholic in my own way. But it is also relativism, also denounced with that profound wisdom that Pope Benedict has. The religion of relativism itself quickly derives inevitably in the dictatorship of relativism. The one who begins by asking for respect for his own theories ends up becoming a dictator who does not respect that of the other, dissents, and that the other says, what you are doing is wrong. Here we have the example of Germany, when after the reaction of a small group of bishops representing 1/3 of the bishops present who rejected that sexual morality had to be done in a totally different way, in the following votes forced the bishops to vote by a show of hands, so that each one could be portrayed and later be able to harass and persecute them in their dioceses. Dictatorship of relativism. To put the point that some bishops decided to leave the synodal assembly because they realized how manipulated it was. The religion of relativism, the church of relativism, that if we were coherent, we would have to say that it does not only have to be applied to Germany. In Germany, they will say one thing, and in another country, they will say another. In Germany, they will believe one thing, and in another country, they will believe another. In one country, they will have one sexual morality, and in another country, they continue with the argument to the end. It must be applied to each person. Some will say that they think it is very good to have an abortion. Why not? If each one makes its religion its own way, one would say they like euthanasia, others will say that they think it is very good to have homosexual relations or heterosexual relations outside marriage. Or there will also be those who say that they are very good Catholics, are members of the mafia, for example, or rapists or pedophiles. When one does religion in his own way, one has to accept that the other religion in his own way too as well. That is what they are headed to. But going back to the old Vincent Fernandez song, maybe the issue is that there was never a love that really mattered to him. I do not know if that is fine for a bohemian or an individualist. Maybe some people identified with that kind of thinking or feelings. But for a Catholic, that is the quid of the heart of the problem. There was never a love that was important enough to give his life for. St. Augustine, after his conversion, when he realizes God is and who he is, when he finds that old and new treasure that was inside him and that he had not found it because he was looking for it outside, he says, explaining that he feels for Christ, he who has ever had any love, he who has ever loved will surely understand me. Isn't that a problem? That they have never loved, that they have never loved Christ at least. Because when one loves the Lord, one does not want to love him in his own way. One wants to love him as Christ wants to be loved. When you love the Lord, you do not seek to twist the argument to do what your instincts tell you to do with a clear conscience. Because in the end, that is what it is all about. When one loves the Lord, one wants to give the maximum and does not bargain for the maximum. When one loves the Lord, one wants to love him in such a way that the Lord feels happy with the love that is given, and not to love him in such a way that the world feels happy with the following of Christ. There is only one perfect way to love the Lord, the way of the Virgin. I want to have that way, the perfect, holy, humbly way of Mary. She could say that she loved God in her own way because her way was that of the Immaculate. It was that of the one who had proclaimed herself servant of the Lord and who did not want to do anything else but his divine will. Everything else to love, to follow, to be Catholic in my own way is nothing but a plot of the devil in which many fall without realizing that by doing it, they put themselves outside of the church. Until next week, God willing.
We will continue to keep you informed of what is happening in the church, but you can also do so on our news page, www.magnificat.tv. See you next week, God willing.